We turn now to that remarkable scientific breakthrough. 13,000 years after the last dire wolf walked the earth, scientists say they've now brought them back. Here's our chief national correspondent back up and with the video tonight.
Tonight, a howl 13,000 years in the making. In a first for science, biotech company Colossal Biosciences says it brought the extinct direwolf back to life, a species that hasn't walked the earth since the Stone Age.
The direwolf is the first de-extinct species.
Well known from HBO's hit show Game of Thrones, ABC News given exclusive access into Colossal's lab in Dallas, where scientists are using genes from gray wolves to create dire wolves.
We've taken a gray wolf genome, a gray wolf cell, which is already genetically 99.5% identical to dire wolves, and we've edited those cells at multiple places in its DNA sequence to contain the dire wolf version of the DNA. That animal looks like a dire wolf, it will behave like a dire wolf, and it is a dire wolf.
Now, 7 months old, dire wolves Romulus and Remus eating well and getting bigger every day. And David, the company tells us they're not stopping there. They plan to have woolly mammoths roaming the earth again by 2028. But critics argue that this de-extinction could harm fragile ecosystems. David?
Yeah, the images are really something.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, giving all praise, glory, and honor that's due to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rachak, with Dash double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and blessing to the 144,000 and the hopeful elect. Shalom Barakathum. And you heard it right here. Play it back a little bit. You know, he's playing God again. All right, and this I'm gonna go into the image, okay? Because there's a lot of symbology in the scriptures that, you know, Christians they overlook because they don't want to believe, you know, who Babylon the Great is America, and you know whatever excuse that they have. But the scriptures clearly speak about this, and imagery of animals are one of the markers on who we know who the devil is and what rulerships are, okay? But listen to this.
Cells at multiple places and we've edited those cells at multiple places in its DNA sequence to contain the dire wolf version of the DNA. That animal looks like a dire wolf, it will behave like a dire wolf, and it is a dire wolf.
Now, 7 months old, dire wolves Romulus and Remus eating well and getting bigger every day.
Romulus and Remus. Now, brothers don't know the history of Rome. Okay, Romulus and Remus were twins. Romulus is where the term Rome comes from. Okay, I typed it in here. Significance of the story of Romulus and Remus. Okay, so this is them getting back in their bag. Okay, as Jake would say in the world. All right, they're going back to the old ways. All right, they want their image to live on forever. Look, this says the story of Romulus and Remus is more than just a myth. It's the foundational legend of Rome, carrying symbolic weight in Roman identity, politics, and values. Here's the significance broken down. The origin of Rome, Romulus and Remus are said to be the twins of sons of Mars, god of war. Okay, and a mortal priestess, all right, abandoned at birth and raised by a she-wolf. They embody the idea that Rome was born from hardship and divine favor, setting the tone for its destined greatness. Now, you know, if you break this down a little bit further, all right, Romulus and Remus are these two twins where Rome came from, where you got these two dire wolves that they're miraculously bringing back all of a sudden, all right, and naming them after them. Okay, but it says they're twin sons of Mars. Now, who is Mars? The god of war, okay? All right. Mars was the Roman god of war and virility, agriculture and virility. He was also the patron of warriors and was believed to be the father of Romulus and Remus. All right, the legendary founders of Rome. So the chief of the father of Rome and legend is the god of war. Okay, now this should make sense when you go to the scriptures. All right, I had Deuteronomy pulled up, but I'll get another tab going here real quick. Okay. All right. What was Esau's blessing? Okay. It says Genesis 27:39, and Isaac his father answered and said unto him, Behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven from above, and by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass that when thou shalt have the dominion, thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. All right. So the sword represents what? War. Okay. That's how Esau's kingdom would be birthed, through war. All right. Very interesting that they believe to be born from the god of war. Okay. Which is what? The sword. All right. Now, when you look at the planet Mars, which is what the planet Mars is named after, the god of war, okay, by the Romans, okay. Mars is also known as what? The red planet, okay, red, all right. Nickname stemming from its reddish surface color caused by iron oxide, blah, blah, blah. But when you look up in the heavens, you can tell what Mars is from Venus and from Jupiter because of the color of it. It's a red planet. All right. And that's the planet that they attributed to the god Mars. OK, which is a god of war. All right. Who we know Esau, his other name is what? What's Esau's other name? Okay. Genesis 25:30, and Esau said to Jacob, Feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage. Okay, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. All right. When you look up the term Edom, it should be Dam, or based on the word Dam, which means red or blood. Okay. Adam. Okay. Red. Okay. So when Esau's putting things out and it's making headlines and things of that nature, this is him going back to give, power unto the image. All right. And you got to go back and look into some of this history to tie these things together, because he's not just putting things out in the news just to put them out. All right. He's programming. Remember that. All right. And so we know who Rome is, and we know that Rome is what? They're back today. This is Revelation 13. All right. I'll start at 13. Okay. Actually, I'll start at 11, because this puts into context the first beast and the second beast. The first beast was ancient Rome. All right. Revelation 13:11. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. All right. And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him. So he's coming back with a new tactic of democracy, but really he's still the same warmonger. All right. Because through all of this democracy, why is the whole Western Hemisphere under his rule now, spread by the sword? Okay. Why is he in South Africa and Australia? Because although he speaks peaceably on the surface, really, he's imagining war. That's what the scriptures say. All right. If you go to, what is that in Psalms? Psalms 55:21. It says, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords, because that's his blessing. What does the scripture say? His by his sword he shall live. Okay. He's attributing his birth of Rome out of the god Mars. Okay, which is had the twins Romulus and Remus. okay, which is where Rome comes from, okay. And apparently the birthright goes to Romulus. You don't really hear much more about Remus in their legend, okay. So if you go back to Revelation 13 and 12, it says, and he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. All right. So basically Rome is reincarnated again, all right, into a new beast. All right. And he's changed his name. But there's still, parts of it that he couldn't hide. All right. Because he's proud. Like he called the EU, 1957, after the Second World War, all right, the Treaty of Rome, that's what he called it, all right. Signed in 1957, established the European Economic Community, okay, and the European Atomic Energy Community. These treaties laid the foundation for the modern European Union, all right. So Europe, it was brought together by something called the Treaty of Rome, all right. You can go into the seven heads and the 10 horns. That goes into the Roman states, the Roman kingdoms, all right, which were in Europe, all right, which is land that he stole. Okay. It says, and deceived them, Revelation 13 and 14, and deceived them, Salakia, Revelation 13 and 13, it says, and he doeth great wonders, so that he make fire cometh down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. Excuse me. So if you go back to this, one of the treaties that brought the European Union together was what? The European Atomic Energy Community. Okay, why? Because they dropped them bombs in Japan in 1945. All right, and that put the whole world in check. Okay, Esau scared the shit out of everybody. They were like, "Oh shit," And through that miracle, all right, they formed this. Okay, and there's a lot of wickedness that came out of the earth from then too, man. The CIA got really active, going back. So verse 13 again, it says, and he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. All right, because everybody knows about that. All right, so this, we know specifically who Esau Edom is, and that they're tied to the Romans. All right, and it's clearly evident because they can't let it go. One of those miracles that they did was this right here.
99.5% identical to direwolves, and we've edited those cells at multiple places in its DNA sequence to contain the direwolf version of the DNA.
That's called a miracle, okay? You would ask somebody about this, even 100 years ago, they'd be like, what? They think it's witchcraft, which it is. All right? But now everybody's pacified because he just invokes the name science, and everybody's okay with it. But science is just another priesthood, okay? They have their oaths and their agreements and their philosophies and thought processes. It ain't just objectivity, okay? It ain't the best man win in science. You got to know people, okay? That's a Dr. Fauci. Okay, he's not just anybody. Okay, he's got to play ball. All right, and ultimately they're all confounded because they get down to quantum physics and then they don't know what the hell they're talking about anymore. Because they never did. They never understood the fabric of the universe. Anyway, verse 14, Revelation 13 and 14, and he deceived them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. All right. And that wound by the sword was Rome basically going down to the neighboring barbarian tribes. Okay. But now it's back in the Renaissance period. All right. It says, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast. And this is what he's doing today. He's bringing it back, especially through Trump. Okay. That the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. That's where this is going. All right. They want to sell you on it. But if you don't take it, they're still going to put you to the sword. All right. You're going to need to be defended by Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai in that day, man. OK. And just a few more examples before I close out, that this guy has his images, man. Another image, all right, is the eagle. All right. Which goes back to Rome. All right. What if I type it in here? Let me see. The eagle, Aquila in Latin, all right, is deeply symbolic in Roman mythology and statecraft. While not directly tied to Romulus and Reman legend, it weaves into the broader mythos and identity of Rome. All right, this is the image. Here's how it fits in. Jupiter's bird. The eagle was sacred animal of Jupiter, king of the gods. Okay, so that's their chief deity. All right, Jupiter. But Rome was born out of Mars, though. Okay. So those are the two images that they worship, basically. All right. It says, so it symbolized divine authority, power, and protection. For Romans to march under the eagle meant marching with God's blessing. All right. So you can see this is a very proud, spirit that they're in with the eagle. All right. Of course it is, because it's a lofty creature. It sits high up. All right. It says the eagle became the standard of the Roman legions. Each legion carried a silver or gold eagle standard, guarded with intense reverence. Losing it was a catastrophic disgrace, like losing the soul of the legion. Okay. And there's a movie called Eagle, I believe it was with Channing Tatum. Okay. Yep. He was part of a Roman legion, and he basically had to run. He was like a runner. He had to run behind enemy lines to go get the damn eagle. Okay, because it's a sacred image to them. Okay, it wasn't just gold. Okay, it had a spiritual meaning to these people. Okay, and you can watch the film. It came out a while ago, 2011. All right, but you get it. All right. So those are the two primary chief images of this guy. And when you go to Obadiah 1, all right, or just one chapter. Okay, Obadiah 1 and 3, it says, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rocks, whose habitation is high. Now, what animal sits in the clefts and the rocks up high? Okay. See if it'll pull it up. It says here, trees around water. See, it's really saying around water, not like where they live, but they'll either live in a tree or high up in a mountain, and most trees, it'll be on a mountain because they live high up. They're high altitude birds. As a matter of fact, they're so high altitude that most One of the defense mechanisms for smaller birds that try to, chase them away is just to fly up high, because smaller birds can't survive up at those altitudes. Okay. But going back to the scriptures, all right, which we'll prove this out where the eagle dwells. Okay. It says, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Okay. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, all right, because they're not just high up in the clefts of the rocks, they can fly. Okay. And so this goes into a spirit of pride into these people, man. Okay. In this image. All right. It says, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord Yahweh. Okay. So this is another marker, all right, of who we're dealing with. All right. As a matter of fact, if you go to 2nd Esdras, all right, the 11th chapter or the 12th chapter, all right, and you can read get the whole breakdown on the 2nd Esdras chapter 11 and 12. It says, verse 1, then I saw a dream, and behold, there came up from the sea an eagle. Okay. From the sea, an eagle which had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. All right. And this is a vision that goes into the Roman Empire. Okay. And there are various leaders going on from Julius Caesar all the way up to basically to Nerva. All right. Well, with the end of the Domitian dynasty. Okay. I believe the first Roman emperor after that was Nerva. All right. That's where Jake began to rule. Okay. And Nerva, the Nerva Antonine dynasty goes all the way up to, I think, Marcus Aurelius, the Pax Romana period. Okay. So that why is Esdras seeing an eagle to represent the Roman Empire? Okay. You can read this whole thing, because the scriptures is speaking, man. And this goes over the heads of Christians, because they're trying desperately not for America to be the whore of Babylon, okay, the final kingdom. All right, but look, it says in Job 20 and 5, it says, or 4, knowest thou not this of old, since man was placed upon the earth, that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment, though his excellency mount up to the heavens, and his head reach unto the clouds. Okay. So this is speaking about a group of individuals that are proud and are lofty. And so their images would represent the same thing. Okay. And now Revelation 13, they basically, that new beast is merged into a dragon. Okay. But it's the same point. Verse 7, yet he shall perish forever like his own dung. They which have seen him shall say, where is he? All right. Because the whole world knows about this guy. Okay. Another point here. Job 39 and 26, doeth the hawk fly by thy wisdom, and stretch her wings toward the south? Doeth the eagle mount up at thy command, and make her nest on high? All right. So again, it's spiritually talking about pride and loftiness. All right. Verse 28, she dwelleth and abideth on the rock. Okay. Now Esau will try to say that they hide in trees, and some eagles do live in trees. You got different species of eagles. All right. But anywhere there's a mountain and there's a valley and a lake, that's where you're going to find eagles. Okay. Where there's water and mountains near each other. Okay. It says, doeth the eagle, verse 28, she dwelleth and abideth on the rock, upon the crag of the rock, and the strong place. From thence she seeketh the prey, and her eyes behold afar off. Okay? It says, her young ones also suck up blood, and where the slain are, there is she. All right? So this is symbolic to Esau. Okay, Jeremiah 49. Okay. Jeremiah 49, I started at 14. I have heard a rumor from the Lord Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent unto the heathen, saying, gather ye together and come against her and rise up to the battle. For lo, I will make thee small among the heathen and despised among men. All right. So Esau's not going to be completely done away with after this battle. Okay. He's got to serve slavery. Okay. You're not just going to get away with getting burnt up right away off the bat. All right. It says, verse 16, thy terribleness hath deceived thee, and the pride of thine heart, O thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, that holdest the height of the hill. Though thou shouldest makest thy nest as high as the eagle, I will bring thee down from thence, saith the Lord Yahweh. So this is imagery, okay? And this is why the eagle is so prominent among, American imagery, because it goes back to Rome. And when you look up Greece, okay, probably not a good Google search. I said, did Greece have eagle imagery? It says, yes, the eagle was a prominent and important symbol in ancient Greece, particularly associated with the god Zeus. Okay, the eagle often referred to as the eagle of Zeus, and Zeus was also Jupiter in the Roman gods, okay, in the Roman pantheon. Okay, we read that earlier. The eagle, often referred to as the eagle of Zeus, was one of the chief attributes and personifications. It was believed to be his messenger and companion, and was even known to transform into an eagle himself. Okay, so the chief deity of Greece was heavily associated with the eagle. Okay, and that's why the Romans took it on. Okay, and I believe it even goes back to Egypt. Yep. So you get the point. Okay. So this is things we pay attention to, because when he starts beating on his chest again, making people, bow down to the image, he's gonna do things like this, like bring back the dire wolf. All right, when he's subliminally telling you things. All right. Isaiah 14 and 13, for thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of the Most High, I will sit also on the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the cloud, I will be like the Most High. Yet shalt thou be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. All right, and this is him again in the eagle-like mindset, Salakia. All right, last one. Amos 9. All right, though they dig into hell, thence shall mine hand take them. Amos 9 and 2. Though they dig into hell, thence shall mine hand take them. Though they climb up to heaven, thence will I bring them down. All right, so pay attention to what the devil is doing, because he's getting ready to make a move. Anyway, Lord willing, this is edifying. On to the next. Shalom.